March 3rd, 1944, 14:10 hours, near the village of Villers-Faussard, Normandy. The rain had stopped only minutes ago, but the hedgerows still glistened as if the sky hadn't yet made up its mind. Sergeant George Dring wiped a smear of mud from his goggles, the engine of his Sherman rumbling beneath him like a restless animal. The ears smelled of damp earth and burnt cordite, fresh signs that the fighting had rolled through here only moments earlier. Enemy armor ahead, large silhouette. Can't tell if it's abandoned. The radio crackled in Dring's headphones, the voice tight with uncertainty. You can almost feel his pulse quicken as he leaned forward in his seat. Large silhouette. In Normandy, that meant one thing: Tiger. The crew went silent, each man holding his breath in that invisible space between caution and fear. The Tiger I was the monster of every British tanker's nightmares. 88mm cannon, thick frontal armor, and a reputation for turning Shermans into burning coffins at 1,500 yards. If one was sitting up ahead, even abandoned, it could be booby-trapped. Or worse, its crew could still be inside. Dring raised his binoculars. There it was, half shrouded by the hedgerow, its dark yellow hull streaked with mud. Its turret drooped slightly as if exhausted from its last fight. A Tiger tank. Real. Immense. Close enough that the men could almost hear the echo of shells it had fired only hours before. Driver, creep forward, slow. The Sherman rolled ahead, each track clattering softly against the wet ground. Dring's men were veterans, but this moment felt different. The Tiger wasn't just a tank, it was a symbol, a legend, a steel giant whispered about in mess halls and briefing tents. At 30 yards, Dring signaled halt. He opened the hatch, cold air flooding in as he climbed out. Rainwater dripped from the Tiger's mantlet. The machine loomed over him, dwarfing the Sherman in both height and weight. You can imagine him stepping closer, one cautious boot at a time, waiting for a hatch to spring open, for a rifle to crack out from the cupola. But nothing. The Tiger did not move. It did not breathe. It sat like a fallen king. Dring gripped the handle of the turret hatch, hesitating for just a heartbeat, then wrenched it open. The inside was still warm. The crew had fled recently, very recently. Rations lay scattered on the floor. A half-smoked cigarette smoldered in the holder. The smell of diesel and gunpowder clung to everything. "Sergeant, is it clear?" Clear. Completely clear. His voice echoed hollowly inside the armored chamber. And that's when it happened. An idea flickered through the crew like a spark. They could take it. A British crew sitting inside the most feared tank of the war. "Mount up. We're taking this Tiger back." You can almost hear the disbelief mixed with nervous laughter. A British crew capturing a Tiger? It sounded like something from a soldier's tall tale, the kind told in pubs long after the fighting ended. But here they were. Dring slid into the driver's position, the cockpit of a mechanical beast designed for domination. He pressed the starter. The Tiger coughed once, twice, then roared awake, its Maybach engine filling the hedgerow with a guttural growl that sent birds scattering from the branches above. For the first time, the crew felt what it was like to command such power. The hull trembled like a living thing. The controls responded with a weight and authority unlike anything in their Sherman. But then Dring noticed something. something wrong, something that made his stomach tighten. He tapped the fuel gauge. Tapped again. It barely moved. The Tiger was running on fumes. A machine this powerful shouldn't have been abandoned intact, unless the crew had no choice. Unless Germany had reached a point where even its most prized weapons were being left behind because they couldn't be fueled, serviced, or supplied. Dring exhaled slowly. His realization wasn't a triumphant one. It was unsettling. If the Tiger was empty, what else was Germany running out of? The engine sputtered softly, almost like a dying breath. Something was happening behind the German lines, something far worse than any Allied briefing had suggested. And Dring was sitting in the silent proof of it. The Tiger's engine rumbled unevenly beneath Sergeant Dring's boots, each vibration a reminder that the beast he'd captured was already dying. The Maybach's growl should have been thunderous, deep and confident, but instead it coughed, hesitated, and swallowed its own power like an animal too weak to stand. "Sergeant, this thing's not going to make it far." Corporal Johnson's voice echoed from inside the turret. He wasn't wrong. The fuel gauge barely flickered above empty, the needle trembling as if unsure whether it wanted to admit the truth. Dring pressed his palm to the hull. The steel felt colder now, more lifeless than it had minutes before. The Tiger was supposed to be unstoppable, Germany's iron fist, its armored pride, but here sat one of Hitler's giants, abandoned, underfueled, half-stocked, and left behind like a burden too heavy for the Wehrmacht to carry anymore. He slid out of the driver's seat and into the turret, his head brushing the interior walls. Inside the cramped space smelled of engine oil and desperation. Shell racks meant to hold dozens of 88mm rounds were nearly empty. The machine gun ammunition boxes had been rifled through. Even spare parts, normally tucked into compartments with compulsive German precision, were missing. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't deliberate abandonment. It was depletion. "Look at this place," Dring muttered, running a hand over the scuffed armor plates. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. You can almost feel what they felt, like stepping inside the fortress of a once mighty enemy, only to discover it's built on rotting foundations. The Tiger wasn't just out of fuel, it was out of war. Private Ellis swung open a small maintenance hatch near the floor. "Sergeant, you'll want to see this." Inside were tiny piles of metal shavings. Nothing dramatic, nothing you'd notice unless you knew the guts of armored machines. But Dring did. Those shavings meant grinding gears, a transmission running past its limits, a vehicle pushed too far, too fast, with no time or parts to repair it. He looked toward the front, toward German lines that were shrinking every day. "Even their Tigers are bleeding dry," he whispered. The realization felt heavier than the tank's armor. Germany wasn't just retreating. It was collapsing from within, starved of fuel and materials that fed its war machine. And if frontline crews were abandoning perfectly good Tiger tanks because they couldn't keep them running, what else were they losing? A dull thud sounded outside, British infantry approaching through the hedgerow. Dring climbed out of the turret to meet them, boots squelching in the mud. "Did you really start it?" an infantry corporal shouted, half awe, half disbelief. "Ran for a minute, but she's dry, bone dry." The infantrymen circled the Tiger like spectators around a fallen bull. Even battered, The tank radiated power. Its thick glasses plate, its monstrous 88mm barrel, its imposing silhouette. Yet now it was nothing more than a shell, a relic of a momentum Germany no longer had. A drizzle began to fall again, misting over the Tiger's hull. Water trickled down the barrel like tears. Dring leaned close. "Sergeant, if they're leaving these behind—" "I know," Dring cut in softly. "It means something's changed." He didn't say it out loud, but every man felt it. The war had taken a turn. Not at the beaches, not in the skies, but in the unseen arteries of an army running out of lifeblood. Dring rested his hand against the Tiger